Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to our final demo for the day. We're super excited about the first time we've been able to bring this demo series to the Future of Cities Conference. As a reminder, my name is Castell. I am a dual degree student pursuing my MBA in Master's of Science in Product Design here at Penn, and I am excited to introduce our next speaker. So today we have Shelley from Philadelphia's Office of Innovation and Technology at the stage. So Chris is the Smart Mobility Coordinator with Smart Cities team at OIT. He manages projects in the mobility vertical. His work currently revolves primarily around the city's Smart Grant Program, right-of-way digitization project. And previously, he worked with the digital equity space in OIT as the Data and Engagement Fellow, supporting Philadelphia Connected and Affordable Connectivity Program enrollment efforts. After this presentation, Chris will answer one or two questions, and then we'll shuffle into Studio One, where the students have actually printed out their research. And Chris will be joined by his colleagues Andrew Buss and Tara Woody, who will give feedback to the students on their research and talk about how it could be implementable in the city landscape. So with further ado, I'll allow Chris to come up. Thank you.
Hi everybody, thank you. This is on, right? I didn't use you took them.
It is on. It just sounds a little quiet.
All right, I'll just yell. Hi, I'm Chris. I'm the Smart Mobility Coordinator with OIT at the City of Philadelphia, as was mentioned. We have 10 minutes for 10 slides, so I hope everybody's caffeinated, took their nap, or whatever gets your juices flowing. I'll just go over really quickly. Oh, disclaimer. If you hear anything that sounds like an opinion at any point during this, it's my opinion and not the City of Philadelphia's, and you should not take it seriously at all. Okay, so what is it that we do here at the Smart Cities team? We enable testing and scale-up of cutting-edge technologies for the city while minimizing overall risks, maximizing value for stakeholders. We bring a product-based approach to analyzing and addressing complex modern-day needs of government functions. What does that mean, product-based versus project-based? Some of you are probably a little familiar with this. I'll give you the sort of vernacular version that I wrote up here, which is it's not done when it's done, right? A project, okay, that's done. We are focusing on deliverables as products, like how our citizens of Philadelphia interact with parking spaces is not a discrete project, it's a product, and the quality of that product needs to be increased over time through a series of discrete projects. We offer public sector R&D function to support collaborative efforts with the region's academic institutions, such as Penn. We have an ongoing collaboration right now that we recently started with a group of LUSA students. And then finally, we develop policies and processes based on local needs. I'll give an example from Smart Loading Zones, which is a pilot that we concluded towards the middle of last year. The policy change there was that you can reserve a parking space in advance from an app. The process is the app that you use to do it, the payment method, the enforcement mechanism, and so on. Okay, so this slide says what at the top, but I could only fit 3 question words on the first slide, so this is really more of a how, like the phases that we go through to do this. And there's a phase that precedes all of these phases, which is the problem statement or a challenge. Usually it's another city, department, or agency that we are familiar with, and they're familiar with us, comes to us with a problem statement, a challenge. It doesn't have to be super formalized, it's just, here's the thing that isn't working right now for us, or that could be improved, and we have a few ideas about how to improve it, or we have an idea of what the problem is, but that all needs to be sussed out through some actionable work, like a pilot. So after that first problem statement, after we get a problem statement or a challenge from a city agency or department, we do discovery, where we examine the circumstances of a problem, identify the root causes of that problem, because that's what we want to solve, not just put a Band-Aid on it. And we scan the marketplace for solutions that address those problems. And we hope to shape the marketplace by crafting problem statements and iterating on sub-problems within the problem, so that the vendors out there in the private sector can tailor what it is that they're working on to match the actual needs. Then we do a pilot, which hopefully you all have an idea of what a pilot is. It's a test of technology, or it could be a test of a policy, or a combination thereof. I'll just use examples a bit later to go through what some of our pilots are. And then scaling is what we hope to achieve. I will say we want to avoid pilot purgatory, where a pilot ends and then doesn't scale up because the capacity has disappeared, or because there is a sudden lack of funding or changes like that. I want to note that I don't think we consider it a failure if a project, if the technology in a pilot doesn't scale up because we decide actively that it's not a good fit, or that the marketplace isn't right and hasn't actually filled yet the exact solution that we need. In that case, we wait. Or we speak with the private sector and with our partners to iterate upon that and try to cause there to be more right technology. Okay, so I'm going to do something that may or may not have occurred in prior sessions, which is ask for some audience participation. Sorry. And I have a prompt for you about this somewhere here. So, someone wants to park in Center City. Show of hands, who here has parked a car in Center City? Okay, so some people have not. You're the lucky ones. What are some problems, and shout out, don't raise your hand, just shout out, what are some problems that might come up if you're trying to park your car or your semi-trailer in Center City?
Yeah.
What?
The PPA.
Okay. And what is that problem? The PPA is an agency. What's the problem that you anticipate when you think PPA?
The signs.
Oh, okay.
They're confusing.
Those are related, yes. What's the issue with the signs? I want to hear more about that.
Oh, the signs? Oh, the problem, sometimes they're very confusing. Like the motorcycle signs. Like I've had a PPA person, and I'm like, I don't know what this means. And they're like, I don't either, but I'm going to teach you.
Okay.
So.
These are not the answers I was actually anticipating. No, it's not your fault. It's mine for asking questions. So we worked with Sidewalk Labs and then Google on a smart living zones pilot for about 6 months. The problem I was hoping somebody would say is, I can't find a space. And sometimes you can't find a space because you can't read the sign and you don't know if that space applies to you. But this is supposed to make that whole user experience easier insofar as somebody driving into the city from the main line or wherever, or South Jersey, right when they get in their car, before they're anywhere near Center City, Philadelphia, they know about this app somehow. That's the hard part, is spreading word about our technological advances. And they go into the driver app and they reserve a parking space in Center City. And then it gives them peace of mind and everything, and they drive into the city and deal with traffic and all that. But then they get here and they find their reserved parking space and they park in it, and they pay by the minute rather than a flat fee. The city gets revenue, and everybody wins. Is the ideal scenario. So what did we find out in this pilot? We had 3,700 individual bookings. Only a handful of reservations were canceled for the reason that the space was unavailable. We learned in a non-technical way that we can navigate the regulatory framework to make app-based reservations a reality, and that we can digitally manage the curve using an app, an API. All right, next, user participation prompt here. All right, I want to knock down, this may or may not be a real scenario. I, or someone, wants to knock out the wall on the alley-facing side of my restaurant so I can sell my delicious soft-serve EM ice cream. Where do I start? Getting permits, all right? Does anyone have any idea what some issues might be in attempting to get permits to knock out the wall of your restaurant so you can sell your delicious yam ice cream?
Fire code.
Fire code, yes. Anyway, there are a variety of permits and licenses that one has to get to do mostly anything involving construction, involving utilities, involving small businesses. And Permit Navigator is an ongoing project where it's essentially an aggregator of all of the different licenses, inspections, fees that one needs to go through as a small business in order to complete the project. I will say that we get emails to let us know when people are using this tool to scope projects, and I don't remember the last time there was a day that I didn't see at least one person scoping a project, and the number of people scoping projects in any given day usually ranges from 1 to upwards of 20. This is ongoing, and we are about to embark on an evaluation of this, where we will interact with users of the tool to get user feedback, see what improvements can be made, and we work closely with licenses and inspections, planning department to do this. Next, Smart Block PHL. The prompt is say that we're working with students at a particular partner university to evaluate a previous smart loading zones pilot. And we want to better understand the mismatch between supply and demand of curb space. In order to understand the level of demand, we want insight into the economic activity occurring at the block level. Let's say we want to use vehicle, bike, and pedestrian traffic counts as a proxy for this. Does anyone have any idea of where we might get that data right now?
Probe data.
Hmm?
Probe data from cell phones.
That's a good idea. That is not currently how we do it, but that's an option that's on the table. So for our Smart Loading Zones pilot, the data about curb usage came from people on the ground, IRL people, who stood at 3 of the ultimately 20 pilot sites at the loading zones, and they observed and conducted a survey of vehicle counts, the amount of double parking, things like that. When you do something like that, you are only you're paying for people to do it. You're limited in the number of people that are available to do this, the number of firms that are conducting it, and it costs money. And because of those constraints, you can only get the data from a subset of the sites, and then it needs to be extrapolated to make predictions about what might happen at the other sites. And in doing so, you lose some certainty and you lose some accuracy. So a potential solution to that is sensors. This is edge computing technology, smart lights that were put atop 22, 23 poles on 13th Street between Chestnut and Walnut. And what they do is they detect, using AI model, they detect objects, whether it be types of vehicles, it could be cyclists or pedestrians, and then it disaggregates everything. It's turned into metadata. The images, like the original image on the left, gets jettisoned. And then we can look backwards and query how many vehicles are turning left at this intersection in Y amount of time. How many people are crossing, how many people are jaywalking instead of crossing in the crosswalks on any given segment. All right, I'm going to, well, how much time do we have left?
A few minutes.
A few minutes, okay. We'll do this one really quickly. So Smart Grant, this is, I think the novelty here is certainly technical, but it's also the first time that the city applied for and was awarded a Smart Grant from USDOT for $2 million. And the issue ultimately that we're trying to solve here is, are folks familiar with what a digital twin is? The Internet of Things. So Our digital twin, for a lot of intents and purposes, right now, at least the baseline of our digital twin is a street center line. So it's an abstraction of everything happening between sidewalk to sidewalk, between intersection to intersection for a given number block of the street. There are very few things that a user of the right-of-way would need this entire abstract polygon for, right? Unless you're planning a giant parade, you want to close the entire block, or you want to do construction on both sides of the street at the same time for the whole block, which probably shouldn't be allowed. Usually most users of the right-of-way are only going to be using a segment of it. If you were a restaurant, you're going to be using, this side over here in the parking lane. You're taking part of the parking lane to have your, what do we call them, streeteries. You're a driver and you want to park your car in a specific spot that you may or may not have reserved in advance using Smart Loading Zones app. We want to make our digital twin look like what's on the right hand of this slide. We want a more granular base map, and that's what the Smart Grant is for. Now, that's part of the pioneering. I think what else we're doing that is actually not technical necessarily is figuring out how to actually comply with some terms of the Smart Grant. This is the first time, or one of the first times, if not the first time, that the city has gotten direct funding from USDOT, from the bipartisan infrastructure law. Usually what happens is it goes to PennDOT, and they administer a lot of that. We are doing it directly now, so there's a lot of navigating how to comply with things, and there's a lot of speaking with the law department. Okay, so why do we do this? Innovation requires a space in which it's okay to try solutions and fail. Like I said before, I think failure is, if we've learned anything, it's not a failure. If we find the technology does not fit in the way we thought, that's not a failure. We'll try to fit it a different way. We'll try to find a different technology. It's an opportunity to hear feedback in a smaller scale. We would rather spend $50,000 on something and hear about the problems with that than have gone ahead and spent $2 million on something and then hear feedback, unless it's $2 billion from the federal government. Flexibility, there's the opportunity to iterate and iteration. Sometimes we have multiple pilots, sometimes we have a demo and then a pilot, sometimes we have different phases of the pilot. So yeah, and a little bit about who was involved. Our Smart Cities Director, Akshay Malik, could not be here today. He was in a past life an architect in India. We have somebody who's the full stack developer at Wayfair. We have somebody who has done a master plan for a town in the Dominican Republic. And then we have me, who is the only American citizen and the only non-Penn graduate on the team. Sorry. Who's graduated from like all the other schools in town. And so that's who we are. And on the right-hand side, you have what's hopefully an exhaustive list of all the city agencies and departments that we work with. Though I realize I omitted our academic partners. So, i.e. Penn, thank you all for me. And I believe we have time for 1 to 2 questions.
Yeah. Thanks so much for this. This was fascinating. So I'm wondering, when you're starting out these pilots and also carrying out regular projects, for example, with the parking app, how do you decide where these interventions go, and how much of that is influenced by, say, like zoning and politics, and to what extent is there space for things like site selection and predictive analytics and finding like quote-unquote optimal locations and times and that kind of thing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe the answer to much of what you asked is yes. There are politics involved, and sometimes it's not like, okay, the technology will fit here, right? It's just where we're allowed to do something in the current moment. So where we piloted the smart loading zones is it was in loading zones, right? And it was select loading zones where we were allowed to pilot the thing were chosen. But this is part of why we do pilots, right? We figure out the technology works. That's sort of a non-starter if it doesn't, right? If it doesn't fit. Where we're allowed to use it on the front end, we try it there, and then we can get into like, I think what are the more interesting questions of like, where should we be putting this? But the answers to that question are dependent on does the technology work at all? And then eventually, you know, if it doesn't work in the regulatory framework or that needs to be expanded to better serve the user, then you go change the regulations once you found out the technology. I think I answered part of your question.
No, you got it.
Okay.
So where are you with the loading zone app? Are you scaling that up, or are you doing more pilots?
So it's not like a one-to-one scale up of that app or that solution, but there is ongoing work on that, on app reservation and like pay via your phone rather than having to get out, go to the kiosk. And that's ongoing, so I can't talk about it too much, but that's happening with PPA. And we meet with the PPA semi-frequently whenever they have questions, more technical questions about what technology is out there on top of like the vendors that they're currently talking to, stuff like that. More to come.
Okay, so if there are any other questions that you all have, we're actually going to move to the second portion of this conversation. We'll be moving to Studio 1, where folks here will have an opportunity to comment on student research. So that'll be more of like an open forum and an opportunity to chat. So thank you once again, Chris, for your time. Either meet us in Studio 1 or you're welcome to go to the panel that's happening currently.